rumors that the players might actually strike during NBA All-Star Weekend, but I want to point out to you guys something that the WNBPA posted on their Instagram. This was 5 days ago. The caption said, in 1964, the top players in the NBA struck the All-Star game minutes before it aired, winning union recognition of the NBPA and changing pro sports forever. Today, the WNBPA is ready to strike for the first time.
That Instagram post wasn't subtle. 5 days before this video went live, the WNBA Players Association collaborated on a video about the 1964 NBA All-Star strike. Minutes before tip-off, players refused to play until the league recognized their union. It changed professional sports forever. And the WNBPA just posted it with the caption, "Today the WNBPA is ready to strike for the first time, demanding to be paid what they're worth." That's not a history lesson. That's a threat. And it's working. Because on Friday night, February 7th, the WNBA finally responded to the players' proposal after 6 weeks of silence. Sports Business Journal broke the story first. The league's counteroffer includes some movement on housing and facility standards, but on the one issue that actually matters, the revenue split, they didn't budge. Still offering less than 15%, the players asked for 30% of gross revenue. The league is offering a net revenue split that doesn't even hit 15%. After waiting 6 weeks for a response, that's what they got.
It says WNBA's latest revenue share offer doesn't exceed 15%, but the league does bend on housing and facility standards. So the latest CBA proposal was submitted on Friday night, and it did not include a revenue split beyond 15%. The WNBPA had waited almost 6 weeks for a WNBA reply to its request for a 30% share of league and team revenue and a $10 million plus salary cap.
Here's what makes that timeline so significant. The WNBA submitted their proposal in late December, asking for 30% of gross revenue and a salary cap exceeding $10 million. The league had the entire holiday break to craft a response. They had all of January. They finally came back on February 7th, and according to sources who spoke to Sports Business Journal, the offer was always less than 15%. It didn't even reach that threshold. They took 42 days to say no. And this matters because of what's happening right now behind the scenes. The expansion draft for the Golden State Valkyries is supposed to happen before the season starts. But according to Annie Costable's reporting, nobody knows the rules yet. Teams don't know which players they can protect. The Valkyries don't know which players they can select. And that directly impacts their overseas scouting strategy because they don't know what positions they'll need to fill from the expansion draft versus international free agency.
And the WNBA's latest proposal included some concessions on housing. 1 bedrooms would be available for players on their applicable minimum salary and with 0 years of service, 2026 to 2028 only. Developmental players would get studio apartments. No significant updates on rev share. I feel like I've said about housing, I'm tired of hearing about housing. You know, when they talk about they're trying to distract you, I feel like this is a distraction.
This is where the housing conversation becomes a distraction. The league's latest proposal includes 1-bedroom apartments for players on the minimum salary with 0 years of service, but only from 2026 to 2028. Developmental players would get studio apartments, and Alexa Philippou reported there were no significant updates on revenue share, just housing adjustments. But think about this logically. If the WNBA came back tomorrow and said, "Fine, we'll give you 30% of gross revenue, but you have to arrange your own housing," would the players reject that deal? Not a chance. They'd sign immediately. Housing is negotiable. It's a detail that gets worked out once the real money is settled. The fact that the league is emphasizing housing changes while barely moving on revenue split tells you everything about their negotiating strategy. They're trying to create the appearance of compromise without actually compromising on what matters.
In the 1950s and early 60s, the NBA was a struggling upstart. Players traveled on cramped buses, stayed in cheap motels, received next to nothing per diems, and played brutal back-to-back schedules with no off-season protections. They had no collective bargaining, no guarantees, and no real rights.
I'm going to stop it right here. It goes into more about the history of the NBA. It is actually an interesting video, but I don't think that this is a fair comparison to what the WNBA players are dealing with.
Now here's where the 1964 comparison falls apart. When NBA players struck minutes before the All-Star game, they had maximum leverage. Cameras were set up, fans were in seats, national television was ready to broadcast. The league had no choice but to negotiate, because the alternative was public humiliation and massive financial loss in real time. But if WNBA players strike right now, in February, what actually happens? There's no game to cancel. There's no broadcast to disrupt. Training camps haven't started. The season doesn't begin until May. A strike today means players lose access to team facilities. It means Caitlin Clark can't train at the Indiana Fever's practice facility anymore. It means conversations between the two sides stop completely. And it means the public narrative shifts from the league isn't being fair to the players are being unreasonable. The leverage dynamic is completely different.
And for the players to strike, like, be brave and essentially do it, I don't know how it would go over. I truly don't. I think the sides need to continue to keep talking. And like we've talked about in previous episodes, we're at the point in time now where it seems like the season is going to be delayed. And if I had to guess, I would guess that the season is already delayed. All the reports up until now have said that if they don't get a deal done by the first week in February, the first 2 weeks.
And we're already seeing the consequences play out in real time. Breanna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, and other stars are playing in Unrivaled, the 3-on-3 league that's trying to keep players in the United States during the offseason. But Brianna Jones just suffered a torn meniscus playing overseas and will need surgery. The Connecticut Sun are hoping she's back for the start of the season, whenever that is. Eric Ogunbowell was just ruled out for the remainder of her overseas season with a right lower extremity injury. In August 2024, she'd already been ruled out of the WNBA season after breaking a bone in her right foot. These aren't minor setbacks, these are franchise players getting injured because they're playing basketball 12 months a year. And here's the cruel irony, the players are fighting for higher WNBA salaries specifically so they don't have to play overseas and risk these injuries. But while they're fighting for that CBA, they still need to make money, so they're still playing overseas and they're still getting hurt. It's a vicious cycle that won't break until this deal gets done.
Table, a lot of players are going to take one-year deals. My whole thing throughout all of this, you guys know my opinions on most things when it comes to the CBA. I feel like a broken record. We've talked about it so very much, but at the core, I am most worried about the product on the floor. The product on the floor needs to be good. Fans are not going to stick around. The league won't continue to grow if the product on the floor isn't good. And with a shortened free agency season, with a rushed expansion draft, and
free agency is supposed to start soon, but nobody knows when because nobody knows if there will be a season. And according to Annie Costabile's reporting, players are already planning to sign one-year deals because they expect the next free agency period, once this CBA is finalized, to have significantly more money available. Why lock yourself into a multi-year contract now when you could wait 1 year and potentially double your salary? But that strategy creates chaos for team building. General managers can't construct rosters for the long term if everyone's signing one-year deals. Coaches can't develop systems if the entire roster might turn over next season. And fans can't invest in team identity if their favorite players are only committed for 12 months. The uncertainty isn't just delaying the season, it's destabilizing the entire league structure.
We don't know all the details yet, but I want to send my thoughts and prayers to Rickea Jackson. She's a friend of the show. She's come on Courtside Club before. There was a very scary incident that happened with allegedly her ex-boyfriend, James Pierce Jr., who was an NFL player. He was arrested on charges of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon, aggravated stalking, and fleeing and eluding the police. And the woman, unfortunately, who was reported that was in that dispute was WNBA star Rickea Jackson. So we have not heard how Rickea is doing, if she is okay, but with that, I can dive more into this at a later date. But no woman deserves that. I hope that she is doing okay, and I just want to make sure that we are sending our thoughts and prayers to Rickea as well. And with that, you guys, I think that's all I have on the WNBA things that are going on. Probably the next course of action from either side. I don't think we get much more back and forth when it comes to the CBA. I could see the players striking if they're truly not happy with this latest proposal. From their Instagram, from some of the things that I'm reading, it seems more likely that the players are still not happy with the WNBA's proposal, and we should just brace for impact.
So let's talk about what actually happens next. because we're past the point of optimistic timelines. Every report up until now has said that if a deal isn't done by the first or second week of February, the season gets delayed. We're in the second week of February. There's no deal, the season is delayed. That's not speculation anymore, that's reality. The question now is how long the delay lasts, and whether we get a season at all. And here's what makes this particularly precarious: both sides think they have leverage, which means both sides are willing to let this drag out. The players believe the league can't afford to cancel a season right after the Caitlin Clark effect drove record ratings and attendance. The league believes the players can't afford to lose their salaries and health insurance for an entire year, so they're playing chicken, and neither side is swerving yet. But here's what everyone's missing in this standoff. The real victim isn't the players or the owners, it's the product on the floor. Even if they reach a deal tomorrow, we're looking at a shortened free agency period, a rushed expansion draft, and training camps that start late with rosters that aren't finalized. Teams won't have time to build chemistry. New players won't have time to learn systems. The Golden State Valkyries will be assembling a roster on the fly without proper preparation. And that matters because last season, the WNBA had something it's never had before: mainstream attention. Caitlin Clark's rookie year brought in casual fans who'd never watched women's basketball. The finals averaged over 1 million viewers per game. Attendance records were shattered across the league. Nike was preparing to launch Caitlin Clark's signature shoe, which would have been the biggest women's basketball shoe release in history. All of that momentum, all of that growth, all of that progress depends on one thing: the product on the floor being excellent. If the season starts late with poorly constructed rosters and teams that haven't had time to prepare, the product suffers. If the Golden State Valkyries look terrible because they didn't have time to scout properly or build a coherent roster, that reflects badly on the entire league. If free agents are signing one-year deals and treating this season like a placeholder until the real money kicks in next year, fans will notice the lack of commitment, and if the quality of play drops because players are exhausted from playing overseas year-round, and then jumping straight into a compressed WNBA season without proper rest, casual fans won't come back. That's the stakes here. The CBA negotiations aren't just about money. They're about whether the WNBA can capitalize on the Caitlin Clark moment, or whether they'll squander it by prioritizing short-term negotiating leverage over long-term league growth. Because here's the uncomfortable truth, that neither side wants to acknowledge the fans who started watching last season because of Caitlin Clark aren't die-hard WNBA supporters yet. They're curious, they're interested, but they're not invested. And if the league cancels games or delivers a subpar product because of this CBA dispute, those fans will leave and they won't come back. The players are right to fight for fair compensation. 30% of gross revenue isn't unreasonable when you compare it to other professional sports leagues. The NBA players get 50% of basketball-related income. NFL players get 48% of total revenue. Asking for 30% isn't radical. It's actually conservative, and the league's insistence on offering less than 15% of net revenue, which is a completely different calculation that benefits ownership, shows they're not negotiating in good faith. But being right doesn't mean you're going to win. And it definitely doesn't mean the fans will wait around while you fight it out. The WNBA has spent 25 years trying to break through into mainstream consciousness. Last season they finally did it. Caitlin Clark gave them something they've never had: appointment television. Games that casual sports fans would actually tune in to watch. And now, because the league won't budge on revenue sharing and the players won't accept another bad deal, there's a real possibility that momentum dies. Nike didn't run a Super Bowl commercial for Caitlin Clark's signature shoe. Fans were expecting it. The anticipation was building. And then Nike announced they weren't running any Super Bowl ads this year, and suddenly everyone's wondering if the shoe release is even happening. Because why would Nike launch a signature basketball shoe if there's no basketball season to promote it? The entire marketing strategy depends on Caitlin playing games, breaking records, and staying in the public consciousness. If she's not on the court, the shoe doesn't make sense. And that's just one example of how this dispute has ripple effects beyond the CBA itself. Sponsors are waiting to see if there's a season before committing to advertising deals. Broadcasters are holding off on promotional campaigns, because they don't know when games will air. Teams can't sell season tickets when they can't guarantee there will be a season. Every day this drags on, the league loses money and momentum that it can't get back. The WNBA Players Association's Instagram post about the 1964 strike was meant to inspire solidarity and show historical precedent for player activism. But it also revealed something important. The players are seriously considering a strike. That's not a bluff, that's preparation. And if they do strike, the league will either have to capitulate or lock the players out. And either way, we're looking at a lost season. So here's the question that actually matters: was breaking those stories about the CBA dispute worth it? Was it worth risking the first moment of mainstream success the WNBA has ever had? Because that's what's on the line now. Not just money, not just principle, but the future viability of the league itself. And both sides better figure that out soon. Because the clock isn't just ticking, it's about to run out. What do you think happens next? Does the league finally give in on revenue sharing, or do the players strike and we lose the season? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed, because I'll be covering every development as this situation unfolds.